Hello everybody. It's been a little while since I made a Manchester Explorer video, but I've been working on this one for about a month, and this is actually my third attempt of making this as I keep finding more information about it. And I've also been doing it on my bicycle and it hasn't been coming out right, so I decided to just do this one on foot instead. But we're located on the west side on Amory Street at the moment, and there's quite a bit of history in this tiny little area, as this was once a thriving business district that was affiliated with the Flatiron District, which was down the hill in that direction. But the first thing we're going to check out is this beautiful Queen Anne Victorian right here. I've done a little bit of research on this building as far as the build dates. You know, I've checked various real estate sites and whatnot, and the dates are scattered. Some are saying 1940 and 1920, which is impossible, as this is a Queen Victorian, and the Victorian era ended around 1900. And also on the All About Manchester History Facebook page that I visit, there was a woman who mentioned that she had family that resided here as early as 1918. And at the end of this video, I managed to find another building like this on the west side that is virtually identical to this one, and the date says it was built in 1900. So I'm going to say this building was built around 1900. And as you can see, it's still mostly original. I'll go across the street so we can get a better view of it and out of the sun. And as you can see, it's a beautiful building. It has a turret, as well as the roof still has the slate on it, as well as the weather vane. The weather vanes are often missing on these buildings because weather vanes are somewhat valuable, so people often took them off. But I did manage to find a photo of this building, and here it is. And as you can see, it's still fairly original, minus the porch that used to wrap around the turret. Really beautiful building. It's one of the nicest buildings on the west side. And like I said, I found another one that's identical to this one that'll be at the end of this video. And also, while I'm here, there's also 3 storefronts here. These have been converted into a small apartment and a garage, but at one time these 2 buildings here were small stores, as well as this one here. This one here, I recall being an aquarium store during the early 80s, as I've been here with my grandmother, as she used to have an aquarium, and we came here a couple times to buy some fish. So right now I'm assuming this is an apartment building, but it was once a small business. And now we'll head up in this direction. As there's 2 small storefronts here also. This first one here, as far as I could see, was built in 1940. And the other one was built around 1900. I found 2 dates, one said 1900 and the other said 1910. So these 2 buildings served as various businesses back in the day. I'm not going to get into the details of what businesses they were because there's been dozens of them. And here we get another view of that beautiful Queen Anne Victorian. And we'll head over here. Yeah, I recall when this parking lot was a dirt parking lot. as I did go to school at St. Mary's, and I recall there being carnivals here during the fall, right around this time period. So during the 80s, this was all just a vacant dirt parking lot. But taken right about here on a rooftop, I don't think it was taken, you know, from the church, as I don't think the church was even built during this time period. But here's a picture taken from a rooftop. It's undated, but it looks to be from the late 1800s or around 1900. I don't see many utility poles or any automobiles in the picture, so it's likely around 1900. The Rimmon School can be seen in the picture, as well as the old fire station that used to be here, which was called the Ladder Number 6 Fulton Station, as well as the Rock Rimmon Cliff in the distant background. And as you can see, a few of the buildings are no longer present, so I'm not sure if there was actually a line of buildings that went up and down the right side of this road. There may have been, but I am not positive, as I was not alive back then. So if anyone knows, please mention it in the comments rather, as it seems kind of strange that there's a line of buildings on this side and there's nothing here. And I got a few pictures of this corner and this intersection right here also, which are fairly interesting. But I managed to find a few pictures of this building right here. I'll try to get out of the sun here. And this is the corner of Dubuque Street and Amory Street. And I found a picture dated to 1925 that shows what was once the Emile Duval Jr. grocery store. The store eventually became the first Champagne grocery store that was formed during 1933 by a gentleman named Romeo Champagne, who also opened many other Champagne grocery stores throughout New Hampshire. One was on Wilson Street, which I believe may have been this building here in this photo. And another was located on Valley Street, which can be seen in this photo. I also managed to find a picture of the Champagne's grocery store. It's a night picture, and you can see the neon light that was lit up here. And here's the picture. And as you can see, the whole first floor of this building was once a grocery store, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And over here we have the Rimmon Street School, which dates to, I believe there's a plaque on it, 1894 is when this one was built. And one of the things that I notice when I'm, exploring or riding my bike through the city is all these neighborhood schools. They were everywhere. Like every neighborhood had these little schools. As prior to the automobile, all the students as well as the staff lived locally within just a few blocks, as they weren't exactly, readying up their horse and wagons to commute 5 miles to bring children to school back then. So prior to the automobile, communities were a lot tighter back then, as people didn't really venture too far away from their neighborhoods, as it really was an adventure to load up your horses and wagons and to leave the city. So in a sense, the automobile, although a great invention, it also kind of killed communities. It really did. As I was just saying, back then, everybody just kind of stayed local. They had no option unless they jumped on a train. Yeah, but these little schools, like if you actually pay attention when you're driving or walking around the city, they're everywhere. Most have been converted into small businesses and apartments. So at least they haven't been torn down. And ahead of me is Goslin's Hardware. I'm not going to get into that right now, but there was once a hardware store there that I visited many times as a kid during the 80s. But right here on the corner of Rimmen and Amory Street rather, is where Ladder Company 6 Fulton Station once stood, which was a fire station, obviously. The station was constructed during 1893 and stood here until 1988 when a fire claimed it. I'm not sure if it was arson, but I kind of think it was, because I believe the building was abandoned when it did get burned down. You know, I recall this building quite vividly as I grew up in this neighborhood during the early 80s. And it kind of stinks that it got burned down. Like I always say, what killed this city as well as a lot of old American cities is the banning of lead paint. Because after they banned lead paint, everything got vinyled and ugly. So it made all the cities look run down, because vinyl just, it does not age well. It really doesn't. It looks gross over time. But I do have another quick thing to get to over here. And I do recall this parking lot when I was a kid. This used to be a dirt parking lot. None of these buildings were here, as far as I can remember, as I did attend St. Mary's School during the early 80s. And I recall there being a lot of carnivals here. At least twice a year there'd be a carnival in this parking lot. But for this next photo, I'm gonna have to cross the street here. And this next photo, it confused me for about 10 minutes as I couldn't figure this one out. But on the Manchester Historic Society website, I managed to find a storefront that said it was on Amory Street. And here's the picture. But if you notice in the picture, the old picture has, you know, it's got 4 stories, and this is a 3-story building. Although they're very similar, even the storefronts on the first floor are almost identical. But it was not that building, because that tenant building, and as well as this one and this building, were all built in 1900. So they were all built at the same time. So I believe that old 4-story building was located down there in the Flatiron District. And I will be making a video of the Flatiron District probably after this one. But it's also possible that that 4-story building could have been on this side of the road, as I'm not positive, but it seems kind of strange that there's a line of buildings here and there's nothing here. So, you know, I wasn't around then, so there's a slight chance that there was a line of buildings here. But if anyone's old enough to recall, or if anyone knows, please leave it in the comments, because it's kind of confusing. And while we're here, let's check out this beautiful carriage house. If you could go back in time, you know, 100 years, this carriage house would basically look the same as it does now. It's in, you know, in need of a decent paint job, and it needs to get gone through a little bit, but otherwise it's in excellent condition. It really is. It's one of the neatest buildings I've come across in all my exploration, to be honest with you. And most of these clapboards and trim boards are original. As I always say, these old buildings, I don't get it, but they were built like tanks, and the wood just doesn't rot. Like, all those soffits are original. And as you all know, I'm a contractor, and I work on houses that are, you know, 20, 25 years old, and they're already rotted. And I see these buildings that are, this one's 123 years old, and there's minimal rot. You know, even these detailed corner boards, these are 100% original. And look at that, there's no rod on it. It's incredible, it really is. They knew how to build things back then, and I don't know why we stopped doing this. Because after World War II, everything started to become streamlined and mass-produced, and that was the end of it. But what I noticed is this carriage house is very detailed, obviously. But the house that it's affiliated with is very just blah looking. But I think this building, it may have gotten renovated, you know, 40 or 50 years ago, as I highly doubt that they would have built a carriage house this beautiful and to be attached to a very ugly house, ugly tenant building like this one. So I get a feeling that tenant building was once as pretty as this carriage house. We'll take a quick walk around it, see if we can see anything old on it that looks, you know, original. Oh yeah, I can see it already. You can see on the first floor where this bump out is. You can see how fancy the front windows used to be with the stained glass and whatnot. So I get a feeling something happened here, you know, a little while ago. Again, I'm not certain, but if anyone's old enough to remember if this building was, you know, a standout building at one point, please leave it in the comments, because I really don't know. Because it is a rather plain Jane tenant building compared to that carriage house. And you can see all the beautiful stonework. So yeah, I think this was once a beauty at one point. Even that building in front of us is kind of neat, the way it's rounded in the front. Look at this entryway, it's so cool. You know, nobody builds stuff like this anymore. It's kind of sad. And while we're here, we'll check out the St. Mary's building. And this is the original St. Mary's Bank Credit Union. And St. Mary's was actually the first credit union in the entire nation. And someone told me in a comment on the Facebook history page is that the original owner actually ran the business out of his living room. That's how it started. And it's kind of a shame that this building didn't get restored, as they just kind of wrapped it in vinyl and tin and that cheap plastic wood that they have now. I hate that stuff, it's so ugly. But as you can see, this, I mean, it's still a beautiful building, but you know, if it wasn't wrapped in vinyl, this building would be stunning. It really would. It's got that rounded corner there with all the ribs along the faucet. The soffit, you know, all that scroll work. It's very intricate, it's beautiful. Like, none of the trim around these windows is original, none of it is. This has all been redone. It may have been in a sorry state of decomposition also, but in my opinion, a building like this should have been restored properly, and it wasn't, not even close. It's even got a green plaque on it because it's a historical building. As well as the building right next to it, it also got poorly done. They hired a cheap not a cheap contractor, but a contractor that just wrapped it in vinyl and tin. It's unfortunate, but at least the building's still here, and maybe someday somebody will restore it. At least the original entryway is still here, as well as the doors. And the same goes with this building. It's just been wrapped in vinyl siding. But right now we're going to head over to Lafayette Park, which has got a little bit of history. Quite a bit of history, actually. But anyone that's walked by here, or grew up in the area, or even driven by here, has noticed these bronze lions, and these do have a story. I've been wanting to get to this story for quite some time, and I'm finally getting to it. But these bronze lions, believe it or not, came from a house on Elm Street. It was a beautiful house. It looked like it had a white marble exterior. It was an absolutely gorgeous house. I don't know why it was torn down. Maybe it burned down. I don't know the exact story. But the house stood where Pappy's Pizza now stands. And these lions were adjacent to the entryway. You know, they were set up in the same manner as they are now. And here's a few pictures of the old building on Elm Street where these lions came from. It's amazing that these haven't been graffitied or vandalized yet. It really is. And you can see the old railings. These used to be everywhere, you know, solid as a rock. A couple of them broke over time due to vandalism, but you know, that happens, unfortunately. And down here is where the Flats Iron District was, or McGregorville, which they also called it, and I will be making a future video about this area. All right, let's try to get out of the sun. I do have notes for this one because there's just a plethora of information. I could not memorize all this. I attempted doing this 3 times on my mountain bike and I failed each time. But anyway, here's an undated picture of Lafayette Park. Likely around 1900, as there's no utility poles or any automobiles present. In the picture you can see a lot of the trees that were very young back then. I don't think any of these trees are from the original park, as all these trees are young, other than there's a line of them along the fence that may be, you know, 80 years old or so. So none of these trees are from the old picture are still here. They're just not. But anyway, also in this picture, I'm going to zoom in right now. And as you can see in the picture, there's a turret with a cone on top of it. And that was the house that I was talking about at the beginning of the video. That's very similar to the Queen Anne Victorian that I just showed you, that beautiful building, which I'll be heading to in a little bit. I tried finding old pictures of that building, and that's really the only one I could find was that conical feature. And also here's another picture of this area, likely dated from, you know, 1915 to 1930 is my guess. It's undated, so I'm just guessing. But you can see that they added a cobblestone road, as well as some masonry work and some side works having been added around the perimeter of the park. And there's also a granite staircase right in the middle of the park, which is no longer present. I don't recall that staircase being there as a kid during the early 80s, but it may have been there. So this park has been, you know, it's been revamped a few times, at least 3 times. Might have even been 4 times. But right now we're going to head towards the St. Mary's Church. And while we're here, let's check out this statue. It's written in French, so I can't really read it. I used to be able to read French, but I've just forgotten about it over time. But this gentleman's name was Ferdinand Gagnon, and he lived from 1849 to 1886. I'm not sure who he was or what importance he was, but there he is. There's Ferdinand. And as you can see, this is the state of all the parks in the city. You know, they're just getting ruined. They really are. You know, there's a heroin needle cap there, and it's just littered with just trash. You know, it's really sad. It really is. And we're still in Lafayette Park. I had to edit this one in because I forgot about this picture. I'm not sure of the date because I'm just kind of like going off memory because I looked at it last night. But I recalled that it showed the original staircase that was here and also a very nice picture of the church. I was gonna wait another week or 2 to do this video just so the foliage would set in, because all these trees would be yellow and red and whatnot, but whatever, right? They're starting to change, so you guys can see some color. But here is obviously St. Mary's Church, which is it's a beautiful church, and the grounds are also beautiful. And if this church wasn't planted here, you know, this whole neighborhood would have gone downhill in a sense. As because this church is here, it's kind of an anchor. So all the surrounding neighborhoods within a block and a half are still in decent shape. And that's all owed to this building. It really is. Yeah, that's where that granite staircase would have been, which is no longer present, obviously. Like, none of this was here when I was a kid, even. Sorry, I had to edit out this video as I got a phone call, so it ruined my one-shot take. But anyway, I'm on Notre Dame Ave, and this was once called Beauport Street before it was named Notre Dame Ave. And in this picture, you can see the former wooden St. Mary's Church, which would have stood where that grassy knoll is, as well as the Holy Angels Covenant building where the nuns used to stay, as this was once converted into a school, as I actually attended the school during the early 80s, I believe grade 2 and 3. And here's another photo of the original church that once stood here, as well as the church parsonage building, which stood where this red building is right now. And the modern rectory building where the priests live was built in 1907. And we'll get a closer look at it because it is a really nice brick building. It really is. And it's still got the original slate roof. And I don't care what anyone says, slate is the best thing to use on a roof because it lasts forever. It really does. It'll outlast tin or any of those metal roofs. And we'll take a walk around this old beautiful building here. The Holy Angels building, built in 1885, which the plaque states. Beautiful building, it really is. And I'll post a few random pictures as I'm walking around here, as I managed to find quite a few of them. Beautiful church as well. You know, when I was a kid, none of this was here. This wasn't even a parking lot. This was used for recess. As back then, this was an actual school system here. I'm not sure what it's used for now, as far as the other buildings. I've also been in the building directly in front of me also, as I believe I went to 1st and 4th grade inside this building. And I believe I did find a photo similar to this angle, and I'll post it right now. And if we go straight ahead down here, this is the alley that would have led to my grandparents' tenant building that I grew up in. So I spent a lot of time in this area as a kid. And I'm still spending time in this area. And right now we're going to head to Putnam Street. And also, I almost forgot, but I also found a picture of two children that were standing, I don't know, right about here, I guess. I looked up the address and it kind of brought me in this area. But it shows two pictures of, a picture of two children that were mill workers taken in 1909. The address was 316 Notre Dame Ave. As I was just saying, it kind of led me here. But there was once a line of buildings here before this parking lot was built. I'm trying to remember if, the buildings were here when I was a kid, but I honestly just don't remember. You know, when you're 8, 10 years old, you're not trying to remember where all the buildings were, if you know what I mean. Well, let's head over to Putnam Street. You know, in this area, it's still kept up. It's still a nice part of the city. It really is. Until you venture off about a block away from the church, then it starts to go downhill quick as you go down the hill, literally. Which is sad. It really is, because there's no excuse for it. Like I always say, it's all the the large real estate investment companies and the slumlords that have destroyed this city, because they don't care about the buildings. They don't care about who moves into them. All they care about is money. And in the meantime, all these neighborhoods are getting destroyed. And I don't like insulting people, but you know, I've witnessed the tail end of this city for what it used to be compared to what it is now, and it's really sad. It really is. Sorry, I had to edit this out as my battery died. The thing with these GoPros is that the batteries don't last that long when you're running a 4K video. But anyway, we're gonna head down Putnam Street, and here's a photo depicting a mother and her two daughters standing in front of the next building that we're going to check out. In the distance on Foundry Street, you can see the tall Amoskeag coal chimney as well as the horse stables in the distance. And I will be making future videos of the lower section of this area soon, within the next 2 weeks or so, as these do take time. But here is the other Queen Anne Victorian, which is a virtual twin of that other one that I was showing you on Amory Street. The only difference is this one's been vinyl sided and tin sided also. As you can see, it's very ugly, whereas the other one is still beautiful. As well as this one on top of the turret, it's got an asphalt roof and the weather vane is pretty much missing. Part of it's still there. But I did a little bit of research on this building, and it was built in 1900. There's a few people that gave me some information about it. Somebody mentioned that a lot of the nuns used to stay here, that used to help out at the old hospital that used to be here. So the nuns used to stay here. I mean, that's what I heard anyway. So it's not set in stone, it's not a fact, it's just what somebody told me. So at one point, this was as beautiful as that other Queen Anne Victorian that I showed you earlier. And this was a very prominent building. I mean, it still is. It's obviously not beautiful anymore because it's been wrapped in ugly yellow vinyl siding. And it's just been poorly taken care of, unfortunately. And all this area was once open, so this building had a view of this entire area before this CMC hospital was built. The yard's very overgrown now, so you can't really see it, but it was obviously a beautiful piece of property. And it's the exact same thing as that other house that I showed you. And this one still has the porch wrapped around the turret, although it's not the original porch by any means. And we'll take a walk down the alley a little bit, see if we can see the back side of it. And here you can see the granite retaining wall that was built to level off the ground so they could build this building. Yeah, you're not going to really be able to see anything because it's just overgrown. You can't see the back side of the house. But as you can see, Manchester is it's turning into a dump. Like literally, it's a dump. I hate saying that, but it is. You know, I try to look at the old version in my head. I can still see the beauty. It's still there. Be positive, right? As much as I'd say it'll take a turn for the better, I don't see it happening. I really don't. Unless something drastic happens. But we'll head down here, and I have one more picture to show you, which will be a tease of my next video. And we're heading down Main Street, down to Main Street rather. And McGregor Street is that way. There used to be a building that stood here also before they turned this into a parking lot. Probably a couple buildings. But most of these buildings in front of me, they're all original, they're all old. I'll see if I can dig up some pictures and I'll just kind of randomly post it right now. But right about here is where the picture was taken. As you can see, Putnam Street on the left. But this was known as the Flatiron District, which was pretty much leveled during the late 60s. But anyway, I'm going to get into that portion of history on my next video. So I hope you enjoyed this quick video of the Amory Street and Notre Dame area. Later, guys.